right, welcome everyone to the Magnolia Shine podcast, the Southern Miss Report. We're here with Andrew Abadie from Pine Belt Sports, and then Justin Storm, who's a professional baseball player, but you guys know him better as the semi-closer guy that could shut it down late in the innings as a reliever as well for Southern Miss baseball. Or I guess you could have him start. You could really have him do anything. Justin, how you been doing? I see you in the gym every single day, but I kind of want to, for the other people.
Yeah, it's definitely been great to see you around. But yeah, just trying to stay in shape. I'm in Madison, back home currently, working out there, training there and throwing. Just getting built up for spring training that starts in March.
Yeah, and when you get ready for spring training, what's it like? Do they send you a whole report of things you got to do, or do you kind of get to do it yourself?
Well, yes and no. Sometimes they have a workout plan and a throwing plan, and they send that our way, but they're very good about letting us be professional and, owning our career. So if there's things that we want to do that don't fit into their plan, throwing wise or lifting wise, as long as we're upfront with them and show them our plans and what we want to do, they're cool with it. So that's kind of the route I've taken. I've kind of stuck with my personal preference on what I like to do in the off seasons.
Yeah, but something that stays consistent is I know you're keeping tabs on Southern Miss baseball, as well as Andrew Abadie is, who will be joining us every single week. And Andrew, they just had their media day. Explain a little bit of what was said. I feel like, like you said, it was a little basic. It was a little, coach speak. But was there anything interesting from Coach Oz or any of the players?
Well, let's lead off with there's a lot of coach speak for Oz, probably more so than in the past. I think the two probably the one question mark in the field is third base. You've got three different options, and then the other thing is there's I think nine freshman pitchers, which is a lot. And I'm hoping Justin can kind of speak to what that might be like in the for every perspective of that, because he was not willing to kind of shed light on what he was thinking about his bullpen at all. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But from what I saw over the weekend, there's promise, there's talent. It's just gotta come together. I think in my tenure, which I've been covering Southern Miss baseball since 17, I think this is the first time they may have not had a starting pitcher from the year's previous rotation, at least one back that I could think of. I want to say 2020, but that was COVID, so it's not like that one really matters anyway. But yeah, they're kind of starting from, I don't want to say scratch, but it kind of feels like that.
Justin, I understand that baseball is a sport where guys kind of do things on an individual basis, but it works as a collective team. But there has to be some chemistry of having a starting staff that you had the year before. What's it like with with a bunch of freshmen and a starting staff that you didn't see pitch the year prior?
Yeah, definitely. There could be a lot of question marks going into a season with guys who haven't necessarily proved themselves at a college level. But as we all know in the past, there's been question marks for years. You come into the season and maybe this guy wasn't the guy that he was the year before. You look at a guy like Tanner Hall, who put up a name for himself his freshman year, who was not the biggest name maybe coming into the season, but he made a name for himself very quickly, and became a guy for us. And then that next year, the 22 season, where he was a bona fide Friday night guy for us, and there was no doubt about that. So you get guys like that, that kind of come into their own, and as being a freshman, you get your opportunities to shine like that, and there's no telling what they can become. But I could see, yeah, definitely some question marks. I haven't been around the team a ton to know a lot of the guys, but I'll say that there is talent there. I've seen enough that it's just a matter of these guys getting comfortable, being able to go out there and be themselves on the mound.
Yeah, for you, Andrew. Is this the biggest question mark they've had at pitching? In recent years, because Southern Miss is known for the pitching.
Yes. Yeah, I think you could say that. Just because, again, no starting pitchers back, a lot of young arms. They only added one transfer pitcher, which is kind of crazy to really think about. And he was out of baseball last year, which is even stranger. but they've got talent. Kobe Allen was all right in his first opening day of spring scrimmages. It looked like, I'm sure Justin knows, there's not much hitting, a lot of pitching that is sporadic in that first scrimmage. But really, JB Middleton and Cross Sibley were really impressive. I mean, they were probably hands down the best two arms of the entire weekend. And I know Cross has been wanting to be a starter since probably he's gotten on campus, since that's all he did at Summerall High School. But JB Middleton was like, I knew he was going to be better and he was going to have to be better, but he really looked the part. So that was kind of reassuring. Again, you want to see something a little better out of Kobe. He had I think 4 walks, but he only gave up a run and got out of everything that he put himself into. But after that, there was a lot of experimentation for Oz, and that was probably the biggest, I don't know, hardest thing to kind of judge because you're just seeing so many different things. But I wanted to ask Justin if he can kind of shed light of what's it like being a freshman arm, at this point, and with 9 different freshmen. I mean, how do you think Oz is going about it? And, really, really more so that, how is Oz, in your mind, you think, going about it with trying to figure it out at this point?
Yeah, I was in a little bit of a different situation. My freshman year, we had 3 true freshmen that traveled, that made the roster. It was me, Tanner Hall, and Hurston Waldrop. You know, 3 guys that came into their own later in that year. But Oz has had a way of finding these guys. Every time I've talked to him, he tells me that, man, he's got some talent in this freshman class coming in, which is that freshman class that's there now. And I've never been one to question his pitching mind or what he's seeing on the mound. After all, he saw something in me that I probably didn't see at the time. Um, but it's just about going out there, and I think what he's going to do and what he's always done is put guys out there, and let them get their feet wet and figure out where these pieces fit, because the pieces are there, and he always says that the pieces are there for what they want to do when they want to win games, but it's just a matter of finding where each guy fits, and that might not be the same role that they had envisioned for themselves. That might not be the same role he had originally envisioned for them, but it's a long season. And so, you know, the answer to winning games in March might not be the same answer to winning games come regional time. So, just being able to go with the flow, I think, is something that he's going to do and something that he's been good at, as long as I've been at Southern Miss. So I'm very excited to see how he handles it, and be able to get down there soon to see some games.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me because I feel like your team always gets better about halfway through conference play when you guys figure out the rotation, where the relievers are going to come into certain games, and the situation and what guys can do well. I mean, I assume that's for, every team in some aspect. You know your team about 30 games in. I mean, they say in the MLB, you know what you got about halfway through the season. You know if it's going to be a rough summer. For you, Justin, do you help the guys at all right now? Do any of them reach out for advice?
Um, some of the guys that I actually played with, I've still kept in contact with. The guys who I haven't played with, not as much, and that's understandable. When I do go to Southern Miss and throw, I try and stay, away from the guys. I don't want to be like overbearing, like the old guy that's still coming around. But every time I go, the coaches are very welcoming. They let me, get whatever I need to do done at the field. But yeah, like guys that you mentioned, especially like JB Middleton and Colby Allen and Cross Sibley, guys that I've played with, I do still keep in contact with. And those guys have come into their own. It's not anything that I've done, but when I was there, I especially tried to help those guys because they were freshmen, or Cross was a redshirt freshman. Um, anything I could do to help them. And that line of communication is still open, and they know that. But all 3 of those guys have made a name for themselves there, and they're going to keep doing that this year. I think those are three guys that Oz is going to lean on in whatever capacity they're in. They're going to have to be leaders on that staff.
Yeah, Andrew, talk a little bit about, I think when we came into the 2022-2023 season, your last season there, Justin, I think there were some massive expectations for Southern Miss baseball. They were not even ranked by D1 in the preseason poll, but you got a conference team like Troy that's ranked. So are the expectations lower from maybe the national media? I know the expectations from the fans is, play in the postseason and see what we got there. But the national media seems to not be ranking them as high.
This was also the same outlet who put them in the top 9 outside the top 25 and wrote that they can easily host and be a top 16 team, which it's like, all right, they're not top 25, but you think that I don't know. Like I probably would have worded it differently if I was going to go that route. But and truthfully, I understand them not being in the top 25. They lost a lot of talent from the pitching staff. They do bring back a good bit from their lineup, but they got a brutal schedule. And, if they're on top of that schedule early on, they're going to be in the top 25. I mean, their first month is just brutal. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, TCU. I mean, there's Louisiana Tech. I mean, it's endless. So they're going to have a chance to prove themselves right away. So, no, the expectations are not any lower. I think everybody wants to see them break through to Omaha again. I know Justin's probably thinking the same thing too. I don't, and I think Troy, as well as Coastal Carolina, was in the preseason top 25 for perfect game. I think it's just a sign that the Sun Belt's tough in baseball. I mean, it was 4 or 5 bid league last year. I could have maybe had even 6. I mean, they've been a program on the up and up, and they've kind of slowly become a team winning 35 games every year and in the mix. Them being not in the top 25, I don't think it really matters. I wish there was more consistency with D1, especially how you put them in the final top 25 every year and they're like in the top 15 and then you leave them out to start the year every year. I don't get it, but it gets some clicks. I know that much.
Yeah, well, so does 40 wins every single year, right, Justin?
Yeah, the results speak for themselves.
And it's really interesting. I mean, when you have the longest 40-game winning streak per season, I don't know how to phrase that correctly. I guess that's on me. Well, I had it right?
Yeah, 40.
Most straight seasons with 40 wins, it's active.
Yeah.
Which, Justin, you obviously got to be a part of a lot of those. I want to go back before I let you go, Justin, unless you want to talk a little basketball with us. I mean, like I said, I heard you were doing some sick 360s back in the day. I mean, you're about 6 foot 1,000, so.
Yeah.
But talk about Coach Oz. You knew him as the pitching coach.
Right.
When you take over a head coaching job, things get a little bit different, right? He's got to worry about every single player now. Not that he wasn't helping Scott Barry a lot and Scott Barry wasn't being a great mentor to him, but how do you think he's adjusted from the outside to becoming a head coach now entering his second season?
I think it's been a great adjustment. I mean, you look at, there was probably some question marks coming into last season, the transition from Coach Barry to Coach Oz. And that's understandable. A head coaching change is not easy. But I think Coach Oz handled it well. I think the results, like I said, the results will speak for themselves. Last year put up another 40-win season, made another regional, and made some noise. I mean, this is consistency, from one coach to another. And I think that it's obviously very different going from just a pitching coach to a head coach. You got to handle a lot more things. You got to juggle a lot more responsibilities. And I think he handled it really well. And I knew he would. I knew he was the guy for the job whenever Coach Barry announced he was going to retire. But I think it's all about continuing that consistency into year 2 for him and, many more years to come, I think.
All right. Well, Justin, thank you so much for hopping on. I'll see you tomorrow on Live at 9 as well.
Yeah.
Go get yourself some Applebee's or, something that, really, really is just a good old meal.
Yeah, Applebee's. Yeah. All right. I'll have to check that out.
I mean, I don't know. It just came to my mind. It was Applebee's.
Somehow,
right,
Applebee's.
See ya.
Good to see you, man.
Thank you.
All right, that was Justin Storm, Southern Miss former baseball player, now with the Miami Marlins. All right, Andrew, we talked a lot about baseball, but now I want to talk about basketball. Good road win. Team seems like it's starting to play a little bit better. I mean, obviously, it was struggling on the road. Talk about how the team has kind of transformed from their early season struggles.
First road win. 20 games in. Took them only 20 tries, No,
Hey, it's never a bad time.
no, that's very true. But, they have played a lot better on the road. Probably in their last probably 2 road games, they probably should have won them. And honestly, you say they probably should have won most of their road games in conference. I mean, they've all been close. So it was refreshing to see them finally get that. They really needed it. It keeps them in the mix for conference standings. But one thing I think that's made them play a lot better is beginning of conference play towards the end of non-conference. They had injuries. Alvarez was in and out. They had the Curbelo suspension stuff. Everybody's back on the floor, and they also have John Wade back from the whole NCAA debacle. We could do a whole podcast on that. But point being, he's a lot better. They're a lot better with him. Just his rebound presence has been huge, and he can score when he's got the ball.
Hey, I'm not trying to bring any voodoo out here, but is this the first time all season there's no noise that is off the basketball court?
For the men, yeah.
Let's talk about the men for now. We'll keep it with the men. That's got to be refreshing for the team not to have something that's going on that's not basketball. Because when you're the Dallas Cowboys, all you have is things that are outside the organization, and then you got to go play a football game. For basketball, when you don't have that many players, you can't have that many distractions. If you have a lot of distractions, you only got X amount of players. How is that possible?
Yeah, and it's really been the last year and a half. It's just been injuries, bad luck, one after another. And, I still say they're missing their true big man, Tegre Eze, because Denaje Harris is like the one guy who can play the 5, and he's having an incredible season, and I would argue in the mix for Sunbelt Player of the Year. But if you had that cushion, that guy, like a true big man that you could match up with, they would be light years ahead of where they are. And again, I think that's part of the fact that I'm not impressed with the Sun Belt. It's not a very good league. But that goes to show, like, I do think this team could be hitting its stride when they need to be. And I think their last 4 games of the year are at home. So if they can get slightly above 500 and catch some momentum, they could find themselves in the right place and playing the right way come Sun Belt tournament time.
I know they felt like they had too much rest a few years back, and when they had the double bye. But now that the way that the Sun Belt Conference tournament is set up, they could have a very long bye. Quintuple? Is it a quintuple? I don't even know how to say it.
You get into the semifinals if you're the top 2 teams, basically.
Exactly.
We've talked about this off air about that argument of having too much rest. But the one unfair thing about how the Sun Belt used to roll was if you played in so the way it was is you got buys until the quarterfinals. But the other teams that were playing, you got a rest day before playing the quarterfinal game, which was unfair. And the data behind that is I think in the last 5 years, anybody who was a 1 or 2 seed from the Sun Belt was not getting in the NCAA tournament. So they changed it, and I think it's the fair way to do it. It rewards you for doing well in the regular season. It makes the regular season worth something. And if you're the Sun Belt, it helps you get your 2 best teams to have the best chance of getting into the NCAA tournament and try and make yourself a multi-bid league. A lot of other conferences do this too, so it was needed to be done.
Yeah, it was. It's not the Mountain West; it's the WAC, right? That had Gonzaga that has been doing this for a few years now. I mean, they've been doing this for a while because they didn't want a St. Mary's that sometimes had been on the bubble to just get like early rounds. Like, no, we want to put them out, out in front. Does this team have what it takes to win a conference tournament? I mean, sometimes I wish these were double eliminations because then you would really that 1 seed would probably have a better shot. 1 or 2 seed would probably get through, kind of like how baseball, the more games you play, the more the outlier stuff doesn't happen. Not that it couldn't, but it just lessens it. Does this team have what it takes? Can they win 3-4 straight games in a row against top Sunbelt teams?
I want to say yes. Again, I'm not impressed with the league. Even Arkansas State and South Alabama, they're the top 2 guys. But they're not. It's not like last year when JMU was undefeated and taking names and being a top 25 program. I mean, nobody's like that this year. Same can be said about App State last year. I do think their one flaw is they've been so bad on the road. I don't know what that means for a neutral site for them, but but if they play to their potential, I think they can beat anybody. And honestly, position themselves to win it. I'm not saying they're the favorite, but it wouldn't surprise me if they won the Sun Belt tournament.
All right. Before I let you go today, Jackson State Southern Miss football game. It's official now. I mean, it was talk. We expected it, but now we know for a fact when it's going to happen, where it's going to be, and that this is going to be really exciting. I posted this on Twitter the other day, and I think it's so true. I really got to appreciate what Southern Miss does. They're willing to play all these Mississippi schools, and they're not scared to, whether they want to go play up against Mississippi State or, take the risk and play Jackson State and Alcorn. I mean, you got to give it to them because although Jackson State's one of the premier FCS programs, you lose to Jackson State, the Southern Miss faithful is going to be looking it up already, week 2 into the season. And that's no knock on Jackson State, but that's just how the FCS fans work with regards to that. Talk about this game and the fact that Coach Huff already is going to be facing an FCS conference champion, an FCS HBCU national champion just right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, I had known that this was in the works for a while. I'm surprised it just wasn't made official. I mean, they had said this officially. It's been, I would argue, done since December when they said it during Huff's press conference. But I had heard they were going to schedule another Jackson State game with them for a while now, and that was the plan. It was either going to be them or Alcorn again. And they've played Jackson State in the past in recent years. I think the last time they did it was when Hobson was here. But it's a great game. It's a great game for Mississippi. The last time they had it here, I think the Rock was at, 35,000. And, with the excitement for the SWAC and what Jackson State has done the last 3-4 years is incredible. It would have been a really interesting game if it was, Will Hall would have been here because it would probably have been closer than people would have liked. But, and this is the same team that struggled against Southeastern Louisiana. Okay, I'm calling it for what it is. But that doesn't mean I don't think Southern Miss would have won it. Just there's that difference of player. They're deeper. I mean, same could be said.
Jackson State was tied with ULM at halftime.
That's true.
I mean, just say it.
I'm not saying anything. I think Jackson State would have been in the game. And who knows? But having said that, and looking at all the talent Charles Huff has brought in, as well as the type of coach he's in, I do not suspect that to be the case moving forward. People can look back on the what if as much fun as they'd like, but that's the what if. Like the new what if is they're going to play now with a very much different Southern Miss football program. But again, it'll be a great game for the state, no question about it.
Hey, we'll have enough time to predict that game. But I guess for you as a media member, there's going to be a lot of people at the Rock for at least early in this next season at minimum, if not the full season. And to have the Jackson State game, what's it going to be like at the Rock with all these people?
I mean, it's been a while since I've seen it. It's gosh, I guess the last time I probably have seen something like that was Alcorn. Maybe when they hosted Kentucky, it was a rough crowd too. Yeah, it'll be refreshing to see. The school is going to definitely need it. And they're getting 7 home games. People can't forget that as well. So this is the money making year for them. I think they're all in on trying to make as much bank as possible because I kind of fully believe Charles Huff has a spectacular year. He's gone. That's just
really?
That's the sentiment that seems to be in the air here. I think most people expect him to be here 2, maybe 3 years max. And I think
I'm going to pause you. I'm going to pause you there. So then why make the hire?
Because you need to win. Plain and simple.
Yeah, but what's winning if the guy wins? If the guy goes 9-3, it's nice, but it's not sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that at all. But I think if you're the big man, you can't think like that. You got to assume he's going to be here and the average coach, most Power Fives, if they got a successful coach, they're there, 3 or 4 years anyway.
Well, you're either hired or fired in 3 to 4 years.
Exactly. So, I mean, I'm giving you the extreme hypothetical, but they also got Blake Anderson now, who's your OC. That can't be a coincidence anymore. So I mean, they're in a good situation on a lot of that ends. So that's kind of my 2 cents with it.
Well, that was Andrew Abadie. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Had Justin Storm on earlier talking about baseball. There's no one better than him. I'm telling you what, those guys, Reed Trimble's there too. I mean, they got a lot of baseball guys at Grit Training. Shout out Grit Training. I mean, I see those guys all the time and then, just mess with them. There's Mississippi State players. I saw Jake Mangum in there the other day. So it's just full of that. But, Andrew, I'll see you next Monday.
Yeah, man. Happily.
Absolutely. All right. That was the Magnolia Shine podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. Just pick one. See you guys next week.